Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. My name's Brian. Today, I'm going to be taking you guys through a follow-up to the Khorne Demonkin detachment review that I just recently posted. I felt like that detachment review deserved its own follow-up video, specifically for a stratagem within that detachment called Summoned by Slaughter. Now, this is probably going to be the bread and butter of this detachment, right? Anytime any unit anywhere on the table dies, the last model that's pulled in any phase once per battle round, you can replace that model with a 9 inch aura, with a squad of 10 bloodletters. Now, the use cases for this are quite strong, and that's why I'm going to believe that it's probably the strongest strat in the game, if not up there. So, with that, I'm going to take you guys through some examples on TTS. So sit back, enjoy a brew, and let's get right into it. So, as I was saying, welcome back. We're going to get cracking straight into this. There's quite a few use cases for this stratagem, Summoned by Slaughter. Now, it's important that you want to be able to enable the stratagem correctly, right? You have to be able to have a bloodletter unit currently in reserves. A unit has to die on the table, and you have to be paying attention to the last model that's pulled from whatever unit you're going to be targeting with the stratagem, right? Well, technically you target the bloodletters, but the unit that's going to be dying, that's where you're going to be spawning the bloodletters from within 9 inches. You have to pay attention, be very deliberate about whatever the last model is pulled out of that unit. So order of saves does matter. So make sure that you're rolling your saves appropriately, or you're making your opponent go through allocating who's taking the saves. But like I said, this is probably the strongest strat in the book, period. There's a lot of implications for how the strat can be used. You can use it to flip objectives. You can use it to project a threat range from a shooting unit like a Forge Fiend shooting across a table, spawning bloodletters, right? There's a lot of obvious tricks you can do, but I'm going to expand that to a few more that may not be as apparent. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So for our first example here, we just have Khorne the Betrayer. I currently in that detachment review that I just posted, I am running a solo Khorne the Betrayer in the list. Now, he is a utility piece for a few reasons, and he actually gets quite a bit of value out of Khorne Demonkin. For a couple reasons. A, because he gives the Demon Prince loan up, and in Khorne Demonkin, we're spending 1,000 points on Blood Legion units, which do not provide loan up to the Demon Prince. So being able to have a dedicated infantry unit that's going to be following the Demon Prince around, in this case, it's going to be Khorne the Betrayer. To give the Demon Prince loan up, that's one reason to run him. The next reason to run him is when he dies on a 2-up, he stands right back up. That's really cool. This is pretty straightforward. When Khorne goes down, spend a CP, throw 10 bloodletters behind him. He stands back up. Now you have Khorne plus 10 bloodletters anywhere across the table, right? This combination right here of Khorne plus 10 bloodletters is probably going to deal with whatever killed him, as long as he's not being shot at from across the table. But even then, you get to project a 9 inch threat range or a 9 inch bubble to be able to drop the bloodletters from. So you drop them all the way out here. But just know that when Khorne dies, you actually have a good opportunity to debate using the bloodletter Summoned by Slaughter strat. For our next example, we have an objective here. Say your opponent has drawn Tempting Target or Storm Hostile objective. You have 2 Chaos Spawn holding this objective, just living their best life, standing right here. These Deathwing Knights are going to charge these spawn and obliterate them. Spawn are dead. Deathwing Knight stands still. Your opponent thinks they control the objective. They think they've scored their secondary. Spend a CP. Spawn in 10 bloodletters. You still own the objective. You've denied your opponent Storm Hostile objective. You've denied them Tempting Target. And you've probably made them very upset because on your next turn, you're going to be scoring this primary now. And this can lead to a huge point swing. You can deny your opponent secondaries while also maintaining access to primaries. Now, this is just as relevant for if these Deathwing Knights weren't here and your opponent lines up a tank to shoot the spawn. You can always just spawn 10 bloodletters in, even off to the side, right? Like here, where you cut an angle or something, right? Your opponent can no longer interact with bloodletters, and now you hold this objective going into your next turn. One of the strengths of Berserker Warband is that it has access to Sticky on Death. This is kind of a weird version of Sticky on Death. It's like Sticky on Life, like you die, but 10 bloodletters come back. You still hold the objective, and then these bloodletters can either sit here, be action monkeys, they're cheap. I mean, they're 90 points, right? And you can move along and do something else. Moving on to our next example. This is probably one of the most obvious examples. We have this Row Leader Forge Fiend here. I mean, he can be way back here. He can be anywhere. He can be on the other side of the table. Regardless, he's going to be targeting these jump pack intercessors with his shooting, right? So he's going to unload his shooting into these jump pack intercessors. And obviously, if your opponent is going to be pulling models in a smart way, they're going to pull these 4 models first. Let's say this last model also happens to die, right? We're going to take 10 bloodletters, pay a CP, spawn them all, and they have to fit within 9 inches, which is what this ring is, this bubble is, within 9 inches of the last pulled model. This model is dead. And now you have a very reasonable charge to your opponent's home objective because remember, bloodletters get +1 to charge from their icon. So keep that in mind. You can use this cross-table threat range to kill a unit, spawn bloodletters, and just rob your opponent of points. Now, Khorne Demonkin, one thing that it excels at is denying primary from your opponent because it has all of these weird tricks that are enabled by this stratagem. So often nice rip of a charge coming later in your charge phase. You take this objective, flip it, and you successfully took your opponent's home objective and you killed all unit just by paying a CP. Moving on to our next example, which this one's a little bit more complicated and it's going to have a little bit less of a apparent use case. Say it's turn 1 and you kind of want to catch your opponent off guard. Trust me, you're only going to do this to your opponent once, so you can get away with this once, but it's still a good idea. Say you put Chaos Spawn out here, and this could be later in the turn too. This doesn't have to be turn 1. But say you go first and you throw Chaos Spawn out in this middle objective to do cleanse, area denial, whatever, you score your 5 points, right? Your opponent shoots and kills these Chaos Spawn. These Chaos Spawn are dead. You can then take these 10 bloodletters, spawn them, wholly within 9 inches of where that last model you pulled was destroyed, and now your bloodletters are across 2 objectives, right? Now, if your opponent did not plan adequately enough to be able to have backup fire to deal with these bloodletters, you now just earned yourself scoring 1, 2, and probably 3 objectives worth of primary. So keep that in mind too, right? You can stretch that bubble out. It's like an 18-inch wide diameter of a bubble. That's huge. You can fit a whole Hierophant Titan in that side of the bubble. From I know that we'd been joking about that with my friend group for Terranian or Subterranean Assault. Um, so keep that in mind. Bloodletters can be stretched out as such. Moving on to our next example. Say your opponent wants to charge Scarbrand here in the situation with these Deathwing Knights, right? They're going to apply some sort of shooting to these jackals, which are screening Scarbrand, right? Jackals aren't that tough, but your intent was to screen Scarbrand. These jackals die, they go down, spend a CP, replace that screen, bada bing, bada boom, you have your screen right back. And again, if your opponent did not plan adequately for the bloodletters to be able to arrive here, their charge is going to get screwed up. They're going to charge bloodletters. Yes, your bloodletters are dead, but Scarbrand is intact, and he's going to come back and kick these knights, Deathwing Knights, right across the table. Now, you've heard me say multiple times over and over again, if your opponent did not plan adequately. Well, it sounds like, well, Brian, if my opponent puts a tank out and they put a second tank out, then this bloodletter play is not going to be viable. But it's not that hard to set up multiple of these traps around the table so that you're giving your opponent Schrodinger's bloodletters, like I like to say. The bloodletters can do this shenanigans anywhere across the table, so your opponent has to plan for it happening everywhere. But you may not even want to do that. Maybe you're trying to ingress some bloodletters. Maybe you want to do both, right? So just keep that in mind. And then finally, for our last example, now this one probably is going to get an FAQ at some point. It's a little bit dirtier one. The timing on when a transport is destroyed and your opponent has to disembark, it's before the model is pulled. So the bloodletters actually get the chance to arrive on the battlefield before the transport is pulled and the guys are disembarked. So, transport is destroyed in shooting, you actually get the option to set these bloodletters up in a ring around the transport before the disembark happens, and you can force an emergency disembark. Now, your opponent's going to take a lot of mortals on 1s, 2s, and 3s. And then they have to be set up within 6 of the transport. Pretty much no matter where they are, you have an unfailable charge into them from the Bloodletters, and this can be devastating if they have something like Marines inside of an Impulsor, right? It's gonna be very backbreaking and brutal. So keep this one in mind as well. So these are all of just some quick little tricks and tips that I thought of for the Summon by Slaughter stratagem. I'm sure there's a few more use cases out there. Feel free to mention them in the comments below. I'm sure that there's some things that I missed. I'm sure that there's a lot of cool other things that you can do. But for 1 CP and a 90-point unit, all of this headache that you can cause is ridiculous, right? And Bloodletters have 20 attacks, Strength 5, AP 2, 2 damage. You give them Icon of War, access to Lethal Sustained. You give them access to Lance. This unit has so much utility, and it is so good. And it is what makes this detachment one of the strongest, if not the strongest detachment in the book. And I stand by that statement. So I have nothing more to add. Feel free to check out our Discord. We have a Patreon as well if you'd like to bounce some ideas off of me. I'm currently looking at a Khorne Demon Kindle list right now to be taking to the Nova Super Major. So feel free to hit me up in there. With that, I'll say stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn, guys.